Hello, everybody. I'm Lyn Miller, licensed real estate professional with Continental Properties right here in Palm Beach County, and I'm delighted to be with Jonathon Steele today. And Jonathan is a mortgage broker. Can you introduce yourself and tell us about what you do?
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Steele. I'm a loan officer with Premier Mortgage Resources. We are a full service lender doing all kinds of loans, and I'm here to help, really educate people on what the home buying experience is like, and especially in a time right now where we've got a government shutdown going on, want to be able to sit down and talk with you, Lynn, about what's going on and what to expect.
That's awesome. So we've got a government shutdown right now. And if you're in the process of getting a loan or you're in a loan, Jonathan and I are gonna talk, and I'm gonna ask the questions, and Jonathan's gonna give you the answers to make you assured. So if you have any questions about mortgages or with the government shutdown, if you're watching this on YouTube, click subscribe. If you're watching on TikTok, click follow. If you're watching on Facebook, click follow. And you can message us with any questions also, and you can email Jonathan or text him after it's over. So. Okay, John, number one, how does the government shutdown affect an FHA loan and the loan processing for an FHA loan?
That's a good question. It's actually really, there's not a whole lot of difference. FHA loans are not funded by the government. So it's a lot of the processes that go like not underground, but that are not forward facing. So you've got FHA loans that are moving forward still. We're getting the case numbers that we need. But if you are doing a manual underwrite, or you are needing some kind of exception, that may have some kind of delays because usually you need an actual person to do that. And most of the government employees with HUD are not working right now. So any of those kind of approvals may see some delays, but overall, FHA is probably the least affected during the government shutdown.
Okay, so now if a person's in a VA loan, can they still close on their VA loan during a
Mhm.
government shutdown?
Yep. Typically, VA loans are going to continue to keep closing. VA sees this like those systems are essential. That's really what a government shutdown is, kind of closing out all of those non-essential things. And veteran affairs are one of those that's like, this is important. We need to keep this going. So most VA loans are not going to see any kind of difference. Again, there might be some kind of slowdowns for some extra reviews, but for most borrowers, you're not going to see any kind of issues because their systems are all still up.
Okay, now how does a government shutdown then impact the verification of income on loan applications? How does that work?
That's where things start to get a little more delayed, right? Because the IRS is still, at least as far as I know, is still operational until their reserve funds run out. But if we need to get IRS transcripts or verification of employment that way, most lenders have other forms of the ability to verify that income. So W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements. It can slow down underwriting a little bit because we're not getting information directly from the IRS, but overall, it's still going to be working. That's kind of the drumbeat. It was, you can kind of see it's all like there might be some delays, but as long as you're flexible, you're really not going to have too many problems.
See, Jonathan, you're awesome because you answered my next question already. My question was, are there going to be any special considerations for loans requiring IRS transcript verification during the shutdown? And you answered that. That's really good.
I
That's
can read your
awesome.
mind.
So, borrowers can still access FHA and VA online systems for loan status updates during government shutdown. They can still go online and see their status update, then is what they can do.
Yeah, and I think one of the common things that we see is that people think that like the VA and FHA government entities are the ones who are doing the loans, but they're not, right? So most of the time, you're going to keep moving on like you normally would. You're going to be talking to your loan officer to get the updates and figure out where things are moving along. If the government is having any kind of impact on that loan process. And for both of those, like we just said, you're not going to have much of a difference. I mean, you can still get the case numbers for FHA, your certificate of eligibility that you need for VA, those are all still going to happen, right? Those aren't going to see any delays. And most of the time, you're not going to their systems as a borrower to get updates anyway. You're talking to the loan officer.
Good. So now, how about the government shutdown? How will or will it affect processing times for mortgage applications and the timing of it?
I mean, like a government shutdown kind of slows down everything. But like for me, like we've got our own processor. It's not like we're sending things to the government now. There are some loans where you might have, I think this might be a question that we have coming up too, but where you've got the government involved with grants or particular assistance programs where they're like doing some kind of matching and there's extra verifications that need to take place on a state or federal level, there could be some delays, but by and large, like you're really not really seeing too much of a change. Like you might need to
Because
push
us
it.
realtors, we're concerned with our buyers' escrow deposits. We want to make
Yeah.
sure that that's been safe.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
from your side, I think it's important to one, you got to it's just what we would do anyway, is you want to keep expectations on a proper level, right? You say, hey,
right.
everyone, there's a government shutdown. I mean, I think everybody knows that at this point. And so everyone
Yep.
should be kind of expecting something to change. And depending on if it's a few days or longer, it's going to dictate how you do things. Like you might, as your agent, talk to your buyer, talk to the seller, and say, hey, we may need to have some kind of contingency in here that says we're not going to be able to do this in a certain amount of time, or you need to extend closing dates or contingencies for appraisal or financing in some of those ways. But I think most of the time, you're not going to see much of a difference.
Good. And that was my next question then is will the government shutdown delay the appraisal process for a government-backed loan then? Will that happen?
No, because the appraisers are third party. Like they're not government employees at all. You can get the case number for the FHA, which you need for an FHA appraisal. The one thing that you might see is with flood zones, right? So the if you're in a flood zone, like we have plenty of those over here in Florida,
Yep, we do.
there's that is one of the biggest places where you're going to have issues because FEMA is not active during that time. Right. So when you need to get, when you are required to have flood insurance per, uh, per federal guidelines for the property, that's where you'll see some of those delays. And until you're not going to get your flood certs, you're not going to get, some of the other information that you need for flood insurance. And I've seen a couple posts in the last day or two about how like citizens, like the state insurance for Florida is allowing for some delays given the shutdown on verifying that flood insurance is in place because most of the time you have to have that stuff bound before closing.
So in
Um,
other words, if we're buying a home in a flood zone, that's where it might take a little more time then.
yeah, you're at that point you're really gonna expect some delays because
Okay.
they're not writing new federal policies.
Okay. Are there any contingency plans for mortgage processing during if there was an extended government shutdown? Like I think right now we're at what, 7, 8, 9 days, somewhere like
Yeah.
that. What about if it's extended?
Well, so for some of the loan programs, you do have like a Q, like a conventional loan with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. You do have some checks that are done, like the verifying of income. If you can't get the proper documentation that you need for that, which the lenders are already accounting for, most likely, um, you have a 90-day quality control like audit period on those types of loans. That where post closing you can still close, but post close there might be some things that need to be um, captured after the closing. So I think borrowers might need to expect like, hey, because we closed during a government shutdown, the lender might need some additional information from us once everything opens back up again.
Okay, gotcha. So then how does the government shutdown then? I'm asking you a lot of questions here.
It's all right.
Jonathan, you're doing great answering that. We're really helping the people here. How does a government shutdown impact the availability of like a down payment assistance program? How does that work? Will that matter?
I don't think it does. I mean, like I said, if there's like, most of the time those are still going. Like I've got some loans going on right now with borrowers who are using down payment assistance, and they're expecting to close next week, and we've got no problem. The biggest problem right now is that Monday's a holiday, and so we've got to account for that extra day that we didn't really may not have thought about. But for the most part, unless you need a person to be actually doing like a double check, verifying and additional review, you're not going to see any difference. So like
Okay,
we can still
okay.
do like Hometown Heroes, for example, is not seeing any kind of additional delays because it's down payment assistance.
Is there still money in the Hometown Heroes program?
Yeah, I haven't checked today, but it's like last I there's like $34 million is still available. The program's gone very slow compared to last year and compared to what people were expecting. Like we were thinking that money was going to be gone in a couple of weeks. But they limited how many people could actually qualify for that. So, but that's a different conversation than a government shutdown.
It sure is. It sure is. Well, Jonathan, you've done really well answering all the questions about the government shutdown. And if anybody has any questions, Jonathan, why don't you do a little commercial about yourself? Tell them
Yeah,
who you are. And then click
absolutely.
subscribe. And if you guys got any questions at all, message Jonathan or myself and we'll get your questions answered. But put a little commercial on for yourself. Tell them
Yeah.
about your company, what you do.
Yeah,
Again.
so I work with Premier Mortgage Resources. We're nationwide with the exception of New York. That's still pending. But we have like wonderful team throughout the nation. Have anybody I can call and they will pick up a phone from our processor, underwriter, closers. One of those things that we are working to get loans closed and get people into homes. Like we're not trying to um be a barrier to that. We want to make these things work, and I think PMR does it really well. We have access to Florida's state down payment assistance programs like Hometown Heroes, which there are lenders out there that don't. And I am one of those that I'm going to walk with you through this process, right? You're not just a number. You're someone who's buying a house, making the biggest financial decision you can make in your entire life. And it's important. It's a stressful process. And my job is to help educate, as we're doing here today with this video, to help make that maybe a little less stressful.
That's
So
awesome. You've done a
that's what
great
we're here
job.
to
You've
do.
answered all the questions, Jonathan. So anybody out there watching us on YouTube or TikTok or on Facebook, send us some questions. I know the mortgage process doesn't sound very exciting, but it's very, very important. So Lyn Miller, licensed real estate professional, and Jonathan Steele, licensed mortgage broker, thanks very much. And thank you very much for watching the video.
Thanks, Lynn, and thank you, everybody. If you got questions, feel free to reach out.